Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is Marvel Team Up, issue number 79, dated March 1978. This is a terrific read. And this is a well-remembered issue because it is a terrific read. It is a really fun experience, both from the writing and the art. Both Chris Claremont and John Byrne, when they teamed up to do Marvel Team Up, they didn't do, say, a hack job like, say, some of the other writers did with this title. They really put forth some really good stories. And this is one of them. Spider-Man here is teamed up with Red Sonja. See the cover here, it's one in action. It really doesn't tell you a whole lot about what's going on in the story, even though what is represented on the cover does appear in the story. And we're told that the title of this unlikely team-up is Sword of the She-Devil. And we're also told that this is Marvel's TV sensation. Both Spider-Man and Red Sonja had made it to the screen, small and large. Not particularly memorable outings at the time. Red Sonja would have to wait a few years until the Bridget Nielsen film came out, though. Okay, before I go into the story proper, I'm going to take a look at this ad, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. This was a really good film. It was a little strange that it was so publicized in comic books because this is not a kids-friendly science fiction film. This is geared toward adults, although probably a lot of those college students who are reading this comic along with 6th grade me. But nevertheless, I do recommend this version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Okay, I'm going to take a look at the splash page. There is a lot going on here. First of all, it turns out that this is the 7th anniversary issue of Marvel Team Up. The first issue had came out 6 years ago earlier, and that was with Roy Thomas and Ross Andrew was the creative team. It was a decent story. I thought it was pretty good. It was a Christmas story. And apparently they're kind of patting themselves on the back here. This was sort of Marvel's DC style title, where usually the stories were kind of one and done, and whatever happened here, while it was canon in the history of Spider-Man, it normally didn't really, there weren't any long-term consequences. They were just sort of like these one issues where they have their fight and everything was done. And take a look at the creative team. You see it's Chris Claremont and John Byrne. They had done a number of excellent Marvel team-ups, and this is one of them. And also Terry Austin is the inker. Jim Shooter was the editor-in-chief at the time. So this is around the time Jim Shooter really started cracking the whip, so to speak. So anyway, we see Spider-Man. It's at night. We're told that it's December 22nd, 1978. And it appears that Spider-Man, who is webbing along Central Park West here, and it looks like past the Museum of Natural History, he's kind of caught up in his thoughts, not involving any superhero conflicts that are going on, but with his girlfriend, his new girlfriend, Sissy. This is Sissy Ironwood. In this issue, Mary Jane does play a prominent role, but I'm not going to use this issue as an example of Mary Jane in the Many Loves of Spider-Man. I already got issues picked out for both Mary Jane and Sissy Ironwood. Excuse me. I'm a little congested at this moment. So anyway, Spider-Man's concerned that he's going to be late for the Christmas party at the Daily Bugle. And also he needs to speak to Robbie Robertson, but he's hoping to get everything set up. Apparently he had spent a few hours at Chrissy's place. And I'm sure he was having a good time there. So anyway, as Spider-Man is swinging past the museum, we see another figure here. Kind of looks like Wilford Brimley. And it's the night watchman in the museum. And he's kind of thinking of his life and what's currently going on, and his thoughts on the current exhibit that's in the museum. We're learning way more about this guy than we need to. But nevertheless, this type of filler doesn't interfere with the rest of the story. So as the night watchman goes through his rounds here, he's currently in the Egyptian exhibit. The Museum of Natural History doesn't have a full-time Egyptian exhibit. I believe the Brooklyn Museum does, but nevertheless, there's sort of a tour going on, and this makes sense because around this time, artifacts from the tomb of King Tut were actually touring America, so that was huge news. That's when you saw the classic Saturday Night Live skit with Steve Martin. So anyway, it turns out that as the moonlight is passing through the skylight here, it's hitting directly upon this one artifact here that appears to be activated, and it's an amulet. And the amulet apparently does have mystic forces attached to it, because it captures the consciousness of the night watchman here. So the night watchman here is basically hypnotized, and he's possessed. And what he does is that he breaks open the glass casing to this artifact, and he takes a hold of the amulet, and he places it upon his neck. And we're told that this transformation is somewhat painful, but we are spared the visuals of that. Go back outside, Spider-Man. He has reached the Daily Bugle. He has arrived, and he's entering through, my guess, the male restroom of the Daily Bugle, which honestly doesn't look any different than, say, the restroom at the Port Authority building here. It looks like a scene from that movie, Class of 1984. Nevertheless, it's empty, and Spider-Man is able to change into Peter Parker here. We see Peter Parker kind of wearing that Charlie Brown sweater that Ross Andrew was really fond of. I remember, I think for about a year, Peter just kind of wore this one sweater, and it was something Ross liked, I guess, and kind of a tribute. John Byrne is drawing him wearing it too. So anyway, it turns out the Daily Bugle, they're having the Christmas party, or the holiday party. We see Robbie Robertson. He's talking to a very well-dressed individual wearing glasses. And Robbie's asking him, hey, how does it feel to be a mild-mannered reporter for that great metropolitan TV network? Obviously, this is a callback to Clark Kent and Superman, who, remember, was no longer a reporter. He was a newscaster at this time. Spider-Man versus Superman had already hit the newsstand. So this is kind of like a nice little callback to that. I'm sure DC didn't mind too much. We see some other banter in the office where a couple of employees are talking about Carol Danvers, who back then was Miss Marvel. Today she's Captain Marvel. And it turns out that one of the employees feels that Jameson was foolish in firing Carol Danvers. At this time, Carol Danvers was actually a journalist and not, say, a NASA security expert as she was originally introduced. Turned out J. Jonah Jameson, he wanted to come up with a kind of a weekly magazine geared toward the female audience. And J. Jonah Jameson had some kind of old-fashioned ideas, and it was Carol who kind of said, listen, we're going through women's lib here. Now, we know it won't be successful in the end, but nevertheless, we're past what you're thinking about. So the two had conflicts about, the type of content that they should be showcasing in this magazine. And I think that lasted for about 22 issues for Miss Marvel. And then eventually they moved on to something else. So anyway, J. Jonah Jameson, he's in a good mood. He fired Carol Danvers. There's one less bonus for him to pay. And he's asking Peter how much did he enjoy his bonus. That did he get his bonus, and did he know it came from J. Jonah Jameson and J. Jonah Jameson personally. And this was a huge sacrifice for J. Jonah Jameson to give Peter Parker that bonus. Peter Parker saying, yeah, I got that $10. I was able to take, Chrissy to the movies at a discount. Didn't cover everything, but nevertheless, hey, that $10, guy can always use it. So anyway, J. Jonah Jameson's telling him, don't spend it all at once. Peter Parker's thinking yeah, it's kind of easy. And it turns out there's a surprise visitor at the party who is much more valuable than that $10. And it turns out to be Mary Jane. Now, I wasn't reading the Spider-Man title proper. I was reading Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, kind of on and off. And I was mostly reading actually Marvel Team Up at the time. So the breakup of Mary Jane at this time, in this era, a lot of this is actually new to me, because I really wasn't that aware that they had broken up. Okay, before I go to the story, I'm going to take a look at this ad. And it's for the Funny Factory. Super gifts and gimmicks. And this is stuff that you would find kind of like in a novelty shop. Kind of like these small little magician tricks. You see one, you get a phony arm cast. So it says that it kind of looks like a real one. So if you want some reflective or stolen glory, you broke your arm playing football, or you got injured and you're looking for sympathy, they're saying, yeah, for $2.95, you can do that. Stolen valor has never been cheaper. We see buggy ice cubes. This is plastic ice cubes with flies in them. And honestly, they would probably cause damage, not from the fly, but from the plastic of the ice cube. A few other things, sneezing powder, and some coins. You for $1, you get 10 coins from economies worse than ours. And a few other things. So I'm going to go back to the story. See Peter and Mary Jane, they're talking. There doesn't seem to be any bad blood between the two of them, because they're kind of interacting here. Peter's a little surprised that Mary Jane's there, because there's really no reason for her to be there. But it turns out that Mary Jane did know that there was going to be a Christmas party, and she decided to show up. I think she kind of has a little bit of a friendship with Robbie, because Robbie's son is about the same age as them, and they would all hang out. So I'm pretty sure she probably heard some gossip from Robbie that this party was happening. She decided to drop by and see how Peter's doing. She brings her own mistletoe, and she lays this unconsensual kiss on Peter, which is totally okay. It's totally okay. This guy did it a ton of times. When he was Spider-Man and masked, he unconsensually kissed a bunch of Marvel ladies, including, I think, Marvel Girl in Marvel Team Up number 4. So anyway, meanwhile, while this is going on, Robbie is getting a phone call. And he's calling for Peter, and he's calling for Charlie Snow. And he wants those two immediately. And it turns out that Robbie has heard on the phone that there's a big story going on at the Natural Museum. and that he wants these two to check it out because currently these are the only two employees that aren't drunk. So Ravi, he says, listen, um, there's a news story going on, and I need this news story, and I need it accurately. I don't need it through the gaze of one of our drunken other employees. So these two guys, they're going to go out. Apparently, the Daily Bugle kind of has their own patrol car, which kind of looks like a police car. These things would definitely be illegal. Can you imagine, like, how upset the public would be, like, if a patrol car, like, interfered with daily activities and it turned out to be owned by a newspaper reporter and it wasn't an actual real patrol car? So anyway, as Peter and Charlie are heading toward the museum, Charlie's driving here. Peter's thinking that he could probably get there faster as Peter Parker, but nevertheless, he's in this situation, so he just has to kind of sit down and just kind of like calm himself. Turns out there's a third passenger in the car, and it turns out to be Mary Jane. And what had happened is that when Robbie was explaining what was going on with Peter and Charlie, we could see Mary Jane clearly can overhear what was being said. So she decided to kind of be this tag along. But the thing is that, it's too late to stop and take her back. So they forge ahead with her. It turns out they reach the museum. The Bugle's patrol car has some juice with the police, a little bit at least, because they are allowed to get pretty close to the police lines. I think they're letting the patrol car get to their heads because they're actually acting like police officers and they're going through the police lines. And the police are actually saying, hey guys, you aren't cops here, you need to get back there. So it turns out that as this kind of minor tussle is happening, there appears to be a huge event coming out of the museum itself. And there's sort of this large mystic flame, something you kind of see out of a Jim Steranko comic. And it's clearly not a flame, but at the same time it looks like one, and it's clearly a big event. And it's causing a great deal of panic amongst both the police officers and the ongoers, the spectators of this. And Mary Jane, she's caught up in the excitement of this, seeing this thing, kind of wondering what it is. Peter sees an opportunity to sort of leave the scene where he can continue investigating this as Spider-Man. So then Peter kind of sulks off here, leaving Mary Jane. Mary Jane's waiting for an answer because, again, Mary Jane, she thinks out loud. And she wants an answer from Peter. She notices Peter's gone. Before I go on with the story, I'm going to take a look at this in-house ad. And it's for the Shogun Warriors. This is a comic I never read. I never read any of those comics that were sort of tie-ins for Japanese toys. I think it was the Shogun Warriors. I think also the Micronauts might have been involved, and then it was like the Transformers. I kind of forgot. Apparently, Bill Mantlo was instrumental in making this happen for Marvel. I believe what happened is that his stepson Adam, who was a kid I used to hang out with when I was much younger, he had interest in these action figures, and I think Bill had taken an interest because Adam was interested in it, and he was able to convince maybe the Marvel executives that they should pursue some type of deal with the Japanese toy company. And it turned out to be, I think, a somewhat unusual deal in that Marvel was allowed the comic licensing for these characters, obviously with the intent of, you know, these selling in the United States. I don't think they did terribly well. And Bill Mantlo, he, to his credit, he didn't really um, write a commercial-driven comic. He actually tried to kind of flesh these characters out. And I think on the Japanese side, the corporation that had owned these this toy line, they were allowed to produce their own Spider-Man show, and that that show was crazy. It was nuts, and the thing that about it, and this is what I really enjoyed about it, the Japanese catered the show and the character to their audience. So whatever changes they felt they needed to make, they just made it, no matter how crazy. And yeah, it was really insane. Take a look at another ad. I see it's for some posters. One is for the McNichols. This is a brother and sister who were very popular at the time. Chrissy was the big one who was. I mean, she was the most well known. I thought she was okay. I didn't. I think a lot of her popularity was kind of manufactured. And we see another one with the Coneheads. This is the SNL skit. Coneheads really weren't that funny. It was just the way they looked. See the Farrah poster. This is the follow-up to her famous 1977 red bathing suit one. She's in a bathing suit here. She looks beautiful. This poster never caught on as quickly as the first one. No poster did in history. See, Cheryl Ladd. She had just replaced Farrah on Charlie's Angels. I remember when she first came on, and I immediately accepted her as an angel, probably about 30 seconds into her first appearance. Because I had accepted her so quickly as an angel, whenever Farrah appeared on those episodes of Charlie's Angels as a guest star, I never watched them because I knew Farrah didn't want to be there. See, Kiss poster. This is a collage. See Linda Carter, very beautiful woman. This is her naturally, not as Wonder Woman. And then the last poster is Susan Anton. Susan Anton, and I think to an extension Barbie Benson, that was when Hollywood tried to make fetch a thing. They were really trying hard to make these two women the next big thing, and it just didn't happen for them. I think it was largely because of their lack of talent. It was not because of their looks. Okay, speaking of attractive women, we see Mary Jane here. And she's caught up in the drama at the moment. She's looking for Peter. She figures Peter's probably in that museum investigating this event that's going on there. Mary Jane's very concerned. She doesn't feel that Peter Parker is a heroic guy. She knows the men that she likes, and she's like, those guys are wimps. Those guys are not going to protect me. So I gotta keep an eye on these wimps. And so Mary Jane, she kind of does the Lois Lane thing, and she enters the museum, but she does so with the intent of taking Peter and dragging him out. And she's saying, listen, this guy's not cut out to be a hero, just like Clark Kent. But it turns out that this guy is kind of Clark Kent. He's Spider-Man now. And he's checking on what's going on. Now, at the point of the museum where he's at, everything looks quiet, but at the same time, his spider senses are going off. So he knows there's a problem going on, but he doesn't know where it is. And then suddenly it springs out from behind, and it turns out to be kind of these slimy tentacles, which immediately grab him and pulls him back. And Spider-Man's kind of taken by surprise by this. And the tentacles immediately throw him toward these kind of well-developed zombies. So these definitely look like kind of like, the Walking Dead type, but these are the Walking Dead type that took a whole lot of steroids before they were dead. So kind of these kind of like sluggish monsters here. They're trying to capture Spider-Man. However, Spider-Man is much too strong for them. But nevertheless, they do have that numerical advantage. Mary Jane, she comes across the hall where this conflict is happening. She recognizes Spider-Man. She recognizes that Spider-Man's in trouble, and she recognizes that she needs to get out of there. However, that's her first instinct, but her second instinct kicks in. That's stronger, and she feels the need to do something. So she's kind of like at the doorway here, trying to think, is there anything that she can do to help Spider-Man? Again, if you're a superhero, this is kind of chick you want to be with. However, the decision is taken out of Mary Jane's hands on what to do, because it turns out another artifact in that exhibit has become activated, and it's a sword. And the sword is calling to Mary Jane. So Mary Jane at this point is kind of possessed here. See some really nice artwork here. The voice in her head seems to be emanating from the sword, and it's having a much more powerful effect. Mary Jane opens the casing, and she takes the sword in hand. And she finds that she's able to handle this very large weapon here, because it turns out that her body is being possessed by its original owner. And a transformation is occurring. And before I get back to the story, take a look at this ad. And it's an ad for Marvel merchandise. And it doesn't seem to be primo Marvel merchandise. And in fact, interesting enough, the toys that they're selling here are not Star Wars, which Marvel had actually a free license to by George Lucas. George Lucas wanted to promote his Star Wars movie. And one of the things he did was he went to Marvel and he said, listen, I'll give you the licensing for basically free if you agree to produce an adaptation of my movie. And that was one of the reasons why the movie became as big as it was, because Marvel fans actually kind of got to see at least part of the story a month in advance. And Lucas had chosen Marvel because he was a fan of their adaptation of Conan, which at the time was actually their big selling book. And we see a few other things for stationery and stuff. Doesn't really look that appealing. So go back to the story. And Mary Jane's body has been transformed into Red Sonja. And we're going to see, so right here, you can get an idea that this is kind of a clever way of creating this unlikely team up here. And it turns out that Red Sonja and Spider-Man, throughout the story from this point on, they actually can't communicate with each other directly. Because it turns out that Spider-Man's obviously speaking English. Red Sonja, whatever she's speaking, is not English. So neither of them understand each other, but they do have an understanding with each other. And it turns out that Red Sonja, her comic was still available at the time. I think it lasted around maybe 25, 26 issues. I think it was canceled probably a few months after this. So this was sort of the last chance they could give this character, give her exposure in a Spider-Man book. I remember reading a couple of Red Sonjas. They were fine. I enjoyed the stories, but didn't make me a regular fan. So anyway, Red Sonja, she starts chopping at the monsters that are binding Spider-Man here. It looks like she's familiar with them. So she's immediately attacking them. She's not concerned too much with Spider-Man. Spider-Man is an unknown figure to her, but not necessarily a dangerous figure to her at this moment. So anyway, Red Sonja, she's immediately going after these creatures. That's helping Spider-Man a lot. Spider-Man realizes, hey, she's giving me a breather here. Then we're introduced to our foe. And our foe is, I think, Kutengath. I believe it's pronounced Kutengath. I'm not 100% sure on that. It looks like he's kind of a priest. And it's someone that Red Sonja is familiar with because she calls him by name. And he seems to be familiar with her. So it looks like he's about to power up and fire one of his mystic bolts at Red Sonja. Spider-Man sees that Red Sonja is exposed. Not just in terms of her outfit, but in terms of, getting hit by this energy beam. And Spider-Man wants to return the favor since she had saved him. He wants to save her. And he does so by grabbing her from behind and swinging her out of the hall. I think Kutengath here was caught by surprise. So he doesn't seem to retaliate against this. Red Sonja is pretty angry. She wants to be unhanded, and she's basically threatening to brain Spider-Man here. But again, he doesn't understand what she's saying. Spider-Man is going his up and away, kind of like a callback to Superman again. So then, Spider-Man has Red Sonja on the roof of the exhibit here. So not only is he away from Kutengath, he's also above him. Red Sonja is confused because she said she initially thought Spider-Man might be a friend, sort of like a default friend, because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's kind of like the thinking Red Sonja is having. But then she realizes that she might have been duping herself, and that Spider-Man is someone that she has to be wary of. And she basically strikes out at Spider-Man because of this kind of Three's Company misunderstanding. Since the two are talking to each other, but they're not communicating with each other because they're speaking different languages. So then Red Sonja strikes out on Spider-Man. He's surprised by this because he thought he did a good thing. And they both fall to the floor. And apparently it's a really hard hit here because both of them have been knocked unconscious. And this allowed Kutengath to chain these two up just above some type of pit that he had opened up. And Red Sonja, she's kind of regretting what she had done earlier. She's saying, listen, my initial instincts were right. I did change my mind. I did regret that. And if we survive, I'm kind of sorry about that. So that's what Red Sonja is saying. Again, Spider-Man doesn't know anything she's saying. However, he can understand Kutengath. Kutengath kind of like, makes his presence known here. And Kutengath, he's kind of explaining to both Red Sonja and Spider-Man. Apparently the spell that he weaved, both Spider-Man and Red Sonja can understand and communicate directly with Kutengath. So whatever universal translator that they have, they're utilizing it right now. And And Kutengoth, he's giving a little bit of background about himself. It appears that he's from Stegra. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Stegra is sort of like what ancient Egypt is in Conan's day. So, and because this is an Egyptian exhibit, Kutengoth is familiar with the surroundings of this hall. So there's no culture shock at this point because he woke up, he was in an exhibit of ancient Egypt and it looked just like Stigra. So he's like, hey, nothing's changed. And so he has Red Sonja, who he knows about, and this other character he refers to as Man Spider. Remember, this guy, he doesn't know anything about branding, so he doesn't know exactly who he's talking to. And it turns out the pit that had been opened up by Kutengoth, it's like a mystic portal, sort of like the one that was in Howard the Duck, the movie. And it turns out there's 3 of these portals, but one of them has already been closed. And that happened in a giant-sized Dracula. And this is the second portal. So apparently whatever's going to come out of this portal is going to help Kutengoth become a world conqueror. But the thing is, it requires a sacrifice. And Kutengoth has 2 people he can sacrifice here. So he feels the odds are in his favor that he's going to be taking over soon. Red Sonja, she's very angry about this. She just wants to murk Kutengoth, and she's threatening to do so, but she's not really in a position to do so. Kutengoth is like, yeah, sure, right, lady. But nevertheless, he is talking about how he was able to reanimate himself, and apparently he tells us what we figured out from osmosis is that when that particular amulet became active, it took possession of the Night Watchman. And Kutengoth is mentioning that that the body he's currently inhabiting is that possessed body. Spider-Man, he saw the transformation. Spider-Man didn't see that transformation, but we saw it. We saw the transformation of Mary Jane into Red Sonja. So just through osmosis, you get an idea of what's going on here and what this expository dialogue is referring to. This is information that apparently Spider-Man finds very useful. And the thing is that he actually took photos of this exhibit a few days earlier. So he's kind of familiar with the layout. And being a member of the press, he probably had access to areas that the general public didn't have. So he's using his knowledge here of the layouts to kind of turn things in his favor. And before I go back to the story, we'll look at a in-house ad. It's for Marvel, their subscription service. And apparently if you subscribe, you will get a free Frisbee. Given that the subscription wasn't that much, it was like $3 a year. And then they have to mail this bulky, those small Frisbee. Kind of makes me wonder, did they make any money from this? Okay, so I'm going to take a look at the letters page. And it's a short one, just 3 letters, the good, the bad, and the unfunny. The first letter is full of praise. The writer here, Matt, he really enjoys Bill Manilow's work. And Bill Manilow was kind of a divisive figure in comic books. He wrote a lot of stuff. He was Marvel's fill-in guy. He was a guy who can write a lot of stuff very quickly. But his stuff tended to be a little kind of on and off. He wrote a lot of Silver Age type stories which irritated kind of Bronze Age kids at the time. I was 8, so his Silver Age stuff kind of worked with me, but I know older kids did not like his stuff. But he also, when he was given time to work on a story, he would work on these very thoughtful stories that were kind of intricate. So anyway, this guy's a big fan of Bill, and he's talking about Marvel Team Up 72. That had Iron Man in it. I'm going to be looking at Iron Man soon enough. He's praising Jim Mooney as, he's pointing out that Jim Mooney's actually been with Marvel a long time. Jim Mooney was actually let go by DC because he was considered too old-fashioned. Then he ended up working for Marvel, the hip company, for like 20 years. Then we see a second letter, and it's referring to Marvel Team Up 72, and all Ralph has to say is, well, the cover was good. So he did not enjoy how he spent his 35 cents. This other guy, he spent his 35 cents, and he's saying, "Wow, I've had so much bang for these pennies." But poor Ralph felt he was gypped. He was thinking of that 35 cents. He was thinking about those other comics he could have picked up. He was thinking about that candy bar he could have bought. Man. Then there's the last letter's kind of trying to be humorous, but it's not. Just saying, how come you don't bring Forbush Man into Marvel Team Up? I'm trying to think. They did do kind of some of these weird team ups. I think it was mostly Marvel 2-in-1 with the Thing that they did it. I think there was one issue of Thing and the Yancey Street Gang, and that was kind of a MacGuffin that would kind of like annoy Ben Grimm. But he was never vague about who they were, and Marvel never really shown who they were. But I think that one issue was supposed to be like, this is what the Yancey Street Gang is, since Ben referred to them so much. And I think there was also another Marvel team-up that had Galactus and Aunt May, which was clearly designed to sell Hostess Twinkies. So we see 2 in-house ads. Kind of a tale of 2 sales. John Carter, Warlord of Mars. I have no doubt this was their lowest selling title. Never really had any interest in the John Carter comic book. Most of the licensed stuff I really didn't bother with, except for Rom. And I remember when Rom came out, and I was like a big fan of that comic for the first year and a half. But the other licensing stuff, and this is, a licensed property, never got into. And we see the X-Men. This is when the X-Men were really taking off at this time. And we take a look at another in-house ad. It's for Pizzazz. This is like Marvel's teen magazine. Once again, the comic book companies, they wanted higher priced items on the shelves, and obviously stuff like Teen Beat and magazines like that were huge sellers. So Marvel was clearly trying to get into that market, and they did so also somewhat combining their superhero titles. So they were hoping to get 2 audiences. They were hoping to get the audiences that were listening to David Cassidy or Sean Cassidy at the time. And then they were also looking for the regular Spider-Man superhero fans. I remember buying a few of these issues. They were fine, but I didn't think they were anything special. And we see another ad for subscriptions. Okay, I'm going to go back to the story. So Spider-Man has a plan. Now, Kungoth knows nothing about Spider-Man. So Spider-Man, his hands are free, which means that he can activate his web shooters. So he hits the ceiling with his webbing, and he uses that to sort of pull out of the chains that he's currently in, because he's suspended above the floor here in sort of this X-shaped steel girder here, which he breaks just as the tentacles from the pit are coming to consume him and to sacrifice him. Sorry for that being weirdly explained. So Spider-Man's free at this point. He realizes Red Sonja is an ally. He knows he has to save Red Sonja. So now he brings down the entire roof, which once again he knows it's a prop. So he knows that that Red Sonja is probably not going to incur any type of real injury. However, this cheap prop is enough to worry Kuten Goth, because it looks like it's going to close the pit here. And then we see Spider-Man. He jumps into action. He's going to free Red Sonja here. And he's able to rip the chains that Red Sonja is in. Red Sonja does not have Spider-Man level strength here. And in fact, she's impressed with Spider-Man's strength here. And she's thinking, hey, there was only one man in my life who was able to pull this off. And I'm impressed that there's another guy out there just like you, somewhat. So anyway, she does note that he's not as big as Conan, though. Spider-Man does not understand this banter going on. But nevertheless, he knows that they still have to face off against a formidable opponent. Kuten Goth, he's furious. Because apparently those kind of like cheap Hollywood props, they were enough to close this mystic gateway here. So Kuten Goth, he might have put maybe a little bit too much faith in this magic if this mystic pit can be closed so easily. But nevertheless, he's a powerful guy, and he plans on using his powers to kind of get even and to murk these two. Again, Spider-Man and Red Sonja, they're trying to have that banter, but it's tough for both of them. Red Sonja notes that Spider-Man's English kind of sounds like ape grunts, so that's sort of what she's hearing with 1978 English at the time, or if anyone's listening to this podcast, they're probably hearing ape grunts. So anyway, the two are surrounded. They're surrounded by Kuten Goth's monsters here. They realize they're outnumbered. And Spider-Man has an idea of what he can do. And before we get to that, take a look at this in-house ad for Power Man and Iron Fist. These are kind of two mid-level selling titles that I think Marvel decided to combine into one, thinking that we can keep the Luke Cage fans and the Iron Fist fans on board with this, because I think like their solo titles, they were selling well but not great. So this is kind of an interesting way of saving those two titles by just simply combining them and increasing the fan base that way. The cover kind of has like kind of this black exploitation feel to it. And get back to the story. And Spider-Man, he grabs Red Sonja, takes her away from this situation, and his plan is to basically run and see if Doctor Strange is available. Doctor Strange is Marvel's mystic guy. To a degree, Spider-Man does not want to do this because he realizes, hey, his brand is going to look bad if he runs. But he realizes that his power set is just simply not up to this. However, Red Sonja, she's like, F that. She is not running. She is making her final stand here. Wherever Kuten Goth is standing, that's where she's making her final stand. And she's making this very clear to the reader. Kuten Goth, he powers up again. He's ready to fire his mystic bolts. And he does so at Spider-Man. But Spider-Man, with his superior agility, he's able to evade every single bolt, and he flies right into Kutengoth, and he just slams him and takes him through the door, through the glass door. And then we see New York 1978 in its grimy glory. And Kutengoth and Red Sonja are absolutely horrified by what they see. And as a 10-year-old in New York at the time, I can tell you, yeah, it was pretty awful. So anyway, Kutengoth, he's really going through a huge culture shock here. Because the entire time he was in that Egyptian exhibit, and that looked like home to him. So he was kind of comfortable there. He probably thought the world had not changed too much based on his immediate surroundings when he was reanimated. And it looks like he's very confused at this point. He's disgusted. He's saying, listen, I don't want to live in this world. Red Sonja is handling it a little better. Not a whole lot better, though. She wants to get the hell out of there. And however, Spider-Man, he knows he has to take care of Kutengoth at some point. Because at some point he's going to shake out of this kind of culture shock here. And one thing I forgot to mention, I should note, the whole time during this fight, Kutengoth kept referring to Spider-Man as Man-Spider. So whenever he spoke to Spider-Man, he was talking to Man-Spider. This was pissing Spider-Man off. Spider-Man, remember he has A+ branding here. He hasn't figured out how to make any money from it. Just like he couldn't figure out how to make money from his web shooters. So he thought about, hey, I'll just sell photos of Spider-Man in action rather than I'll just hire a good patent lawyer and we'll go to Elmer's Glue and we'll make a shitload of money. But those adventures would not have been as exciting to the readers. So anyway, Spider-Man, he grabs Kutengoth by the collar. He lets it be known that you are not misbranding me anymore. So then Spider-Man just belts Kutengoth, and he tells him, it's not Man-Spider, it's Spider-Man. Remember that branding. So Kutengoth he got belted here. Gonna take a look at the bullpen bulletins. See Stan's soapbox. This is just a train of thought. I should say actually a stream of consciousness. It's complete nonsense here. I don't know what he's babbling about. Most of the bulletins here involve either Marvel's magazine line or some of their licensing properties. And this is stuff that they wanted to highlight. Obviously the magazines, because a lot of the licensing properties that Marvel had, they were being published through the magazine wing. Also, again, Marvel, they wanted more expensive items. They wanted to sell more expensive items on the newsstand. They're talking about Jaws 2, Battlestar Galactica, Kiss 2, and some other in-house characters that they didn't bother introducing within the regular comic book line. They did so through the magazines. I think like Satania and Star-Lord. Although I think they probably appeared in a few comic books. Weird World. That's another one. That's when Marvel was competing with heavy metal. Marvel was doing a lot of competing on the magazine space. They were trying to compete with Mad Magazine. I think their version was Crazy, which is one of the worst of the humor magazines. Then they were trying to compete with heavy metal, and I think they had a few things. I think Jim Starlin had worked on a few things to try to compete with that market, and then they had the kind of the teen celebrity magazine with pizzazz, and We see that Daredevil issue number 157 is coming out. It looks like a filler issue. The next issue, I believe, was Frank Miller's first Daredevil. I actually bought that on the newsstand. I did enjoy the story and I did enjoy the art, but not enough to motivate me into buying the next issue. And I kind of regretted that because that's when Frank Miller really took off and became comic books' next big thing. They're talking about Battlestar Galactica here. The first issue, I bought it. It's a great cover by Dave Cockrum. The show, at the time, I didn't like it. I've seen episodes since then. It's not as bad as I originally thought. And some of the episodes are actually really good. And it does try to create its own internal universe, but they just didn't do it as well as Star Trek was able to do it. And yeah, that's about it. They're just talking about the magazines. There's a Hostess cupcake ad. It's Hulk. Hulk is giving Mother Nature quite a beating here, because he's doing nothing but destroying these trees here. And a little kid comes out of one of them. Hulk doesn't know whether he should smash this kid or not. Again, Hulk has that crackhead mentality, but luckily that crackhead mentality wasn't active at the time, or not fully active, because otherwise, hey, with the crackhead, everyone's on the menu. So anyway, it turns out that the kid wants to help the Hulk. The Hulk is getting away. The Hulk wants to get away from people who are annoying him. And the kid says, "Listen, let me throw him these Hostess cupcakes. This way, they'll be eating and they won't be annoying you." Hulk approves of this plan, and then he takes the kid out of the forest while smashing trees. Honestly, not very exciting story. Okay, now going back to this exciting story. Red Sonja, she's furious. She saw what Spider-Man did. She's impressed with that punch, saying, "Listen, even with our language barrier, I understand your branding concerns, but nevertheless, listen, I was gonna murk him right there, and that would have ended all our problems. And your little show-off thing kind of ended that, and he might be able to regroup because he's empowered by that amulet." But it turns out Spider-Man had grabbed the amulet just as he was delivering that wicked right to Kuten Goth. And what it was is that it was something that Kuten Goth had said earlier about having a possessed body. And he had also hinted upon it was the amulet that had reanimated him. So that was enough for Spider-Man to guess that if he takes off this amulet, he's going to be depowered. And that turns out to be the case. Because Spider-Man sees the unconscious Watchman. Now, I should add that Spider-Man was aware that Kuten Goth was possessing a body of an innocent person. And yet, Spider-Man went full throttle with that right hand, knowing that he was going to give this guy some extra punishment. Now, either Spider-Man was thinking, hey, AC, AB, or like he was thinking, listen, sacrifices have to be made in the name of branding. So Spider-Man had to send that message, even if it meant this guy had to kind of lose a couple of teeth here. So then Spider-Man hears the clank of a sword, and that's the sword that Red Sonja was holding. And she quietly transforms back into Mary Jane. And she faints in Spider-Man's arms here. So she's unconscious, just like the Night Watchman is. And it appears that, once Kuten Goth was stopped, the spell that summoned the champion, which is Red Sonja, that also ended. So once the threat of Kuten Goth had ended, so too did the spell that was that had brought Red Sonja there. So anyway, the police they storm the entrance. They want to see what's going on there. They're hearing a lot of noise from outside, but they don't know exactly what's going on. They head into the hall. They see the night watchman. At this point, he is conscious. He does have this really bad headache here. And then we're told that it's dawn. So some time had passed. Peter is on the Staten Island ferry, which is actually kind of a nice ride if you're ever in New York. And he's thinking about the night's events. Apparently, Mary Jane did wake up. She didn't seem to have any memories of what was going on. The few fragmented memories that she did have seemed to be somewhat dreamy. So in Mary Jane's mind, this was simply kind of like this weird kind of like nightmare event that she was in. So so all she remembers this is kind of like a crazy dream, and she doesn't believe that these events happened. Peter, he has to tell the papers that this stuff did happen. So he has pictures of the fight there in the museum, and I'm sure Mary Jane never bothered to ask, "Hey, Peter, I how come you and Spider-Man, blah blah blah." So anyway, as Peter's thinking about the night's events, the amulet becomes activated, and the amulet is looking to possess another body. Peter Parker does mention that the pull or the influence of the amulet was pretty strong. However, he's able to break it by throwing the amulet into the water here, where it's unlikely to ever be found again. So anyway, the story ends with Peter thinking of Red Sonja, and he has a craving for a flagon of ale, and that's it. And that was a really fun read, in my opinion. So that is my review of Marvel Team Up number 79, and I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.